I was halfway through the long drive when I got the call. My grandfather had died. It didn't make sense. He was strong, still tending to his farmland every day. No illnesses, no accidents, just gone. The official report said he passed in his sleep, but something about it felt wrong. I hadn't seen him in a while, and now I'd never get the chance. The funeral was small. A few neighbors, some distant relatives I barely knew. People muttered about what a good man he was, how he worked the land right up until the end. Someone said it was peaceful, but I could see the unease in their faces, like they didn't quite believe it either. Afterward, I stayed behind. I needed more time. More than that, I needed answers. The drive to his farm felt longer than I remembered. The sun was already dipping below the horizon when I arrived. His house sat at the edge of the vast farmland, surrounded by skeletal trees that swayed slightly in the evening breeze. The cattle were still there, moving sluggishly in the dim light. Something about the air felt thick, heavy in my lungs. The house was unlocked, just like always. Inside, the scent of old wood and pipe tobacco lingered. Everything was exactly as he left it. His boots by the door, a half-empty coffee cup on the table. It felt like he had just stepped out for a moment. And yet, the silence was suffocating. I wandered through the rooms, my fingers tracing over the worn furniture. In his study, I found it, a thick leather-bound journal sitting on his desk. I remembered seeing him write in it before, always meticulous about his records. I flipped through the pages, expecting farm notes, weather patterns. At first, that's what I found. But as I kept reading, the entries began to change. March 4th. Saw it again today. The black shadow. Middle of the afternoon, standing near the cattle pen. I looked away for a second, and it was gone. Thought it was my eyes playing tricks, but the dogs won't stop barking. March 12th. More symbols on the trees. Deep scratches, almost like letters, but wrong. Not carved, not burned. Like the bark itself split open to make them. March 21st. One of the cows was found dead, head clean off, blood everywhere. No tracks, no signs of struggle. Called the sheriff, he said it was probably a wild animal, but no animal does that. April 5th. It's getting closer. I hear it at night. The cattle are restless. Something is out there. The handwriting became shaky, uneven, like he had written in a hurry. April 14th. Steve visited today, but something was wrong. He didn't act like himself. He just stood there watching me. He barely spoke. And when he left, the dogs wouldn't stop growling. My blood ran cold. I hadn't seen my grandfather in months. I reread the entry, gripping the journal so tight my fingers ached. He had seen something that looked like me. The air in the house felt heavier now, pressing down on me like a thick, invisible weight. The floor creaked behind me, a slow, deliberate sound. I wasn't alone. I turned toward the hallway. Darkness stretched beyond the doorway, swallowing the end of the hall in shadow. A whisper of movement just out of sight, a shape, tall, thin, just standing there. My breath caught in my throat. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body refused to move. The figure shifted, almost imperceptibly, its outline warping slightly, like heat rising off pavement. Then it took a step forward. The floor groaned under its weight. I bolted. I don't remember making it to the front door, just the blind panic surging through my veins. I flung it open and stumbled onto the porch, gasping in the cool night air. The cattle were going insane, kicking, bellowing, their eyes rolling with terror. Something was wrong with them. They moved in frantic, jerky motions, foaming at the mouth. One collapsed onto its side, convulsing. Its skin rippled, bulging unnaturally, as if something was moving underneath. I turned away, bile rising in my throat. A low, wet sound filled the air, like tearing fabric, but thicker. I forced myself to look. The cow's body split open. Its ribs cracked outward with a sickening pop. Something dark and glistening slithering free from the ruin of its body. A shape, shifting and writhing, pulling itself upright on two long limbs. The air reeked of rot. It turned its head toward me. No eyes, no features, just a gaping, hollow void where its face should have been. And then it smiled. A deep, unnatural grin split across its empty face, revealing rows of jagged, uneven teeth. I ran. The fields stretched endlessly before me, the dry grass slashing at my legs as I sprinted blindly. The house loomed behind me, shrinking into the distance. I didn't know where I was going, just away. A sound followed me. Not footsteps, something worse. Wet, clicking noises. A low, rattling breath. I dared a glance back. It was running. Its limbs moved too fast, too erratic, shifting and stretching in ways that didn't make sense. The thing that had been inside that cow was now something else, something bigger, and it was catching up. I pushed myself harder, my lungs burning. My car was in sight now, parked at the edge of the dirt road. Just a little further, a voice whispered in my ear. "Hey, kiddo," I screamed. The ground rushed up to meet me as I stumbled, my knees hitting the dirt hard. Pain shot through my legs, but I didn't stop. I scrambled forward, throwing myself into the car, yanking the door shut behind me. The thing slammed into the window. My grandfather's face stared back at me, but it wasn't him. The eyes were too dark, the skin stretched too tight. The mouth moved, but the words that came out were wrong. Too many voices speaking at once. "You don't recognize me?" My hands fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life. It grinned wider. I slammed my foot on the gas. The car shot forward, the tires kicking up a cloud of dust and gravel. I didn't look back. I didn't slow down. Not until I saw the lights of the city in the distance, the night behind me swallowing that horrible place whole. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. My grandfather's too wide grin, his hollow eyes staring right through me. But I told myself it was over, that I was safe now. The next morning, my mother called. She sounded off. Her voice was flat, emotionless, like she was forcing the words. "Hey, sweetheart," she said. "You coming over for dinner tonight?" Something in my stomach twisted. She never called me sweetheart. I hesitated, gripping my phone so tight my fingers ached. "Mom, are you okay?" Silence. Then, too slowly, too smoothly. "Of course, kiddo." My mouth went dry. She never called me that either. I hung up without answering. Outside, the wind was still. The morning air felt thick, heavy. Something was watching me, and it had followed me home.